Okay.
All right, good day, guys. We are here once again with the next video. Me and Kenneth, we are going to be handling the next tool that we want to provide you guys, which is called Level 1 Journaling. And yeah, like by this time now, you guys know how we look. And yeah, I don't know about you, Kenneth, but I'm very, very excited about this. How do you feel about the whole process of journaling here, and also with the promises that comes with it?
Super excited, Stefan. I can't wait. So the slide says you will gain a new tool that can be used to open the faucet and regulate your emotions. You will know how to effectively regulate your emotions by making use of emotional journaling. Ta-da! That's the thing we're going to be talking about.
Right, no, fantastic, fantastic. So yes, like we've spoken about before, we are on the road of going from emotionally overwhelmed all the way to being emotionally regulated. So that is the steps that we want to take throughout this whole process. And yeah, just for me to say here, we are here to gain an understanding of what I would see as one of the biggest tools that we use in emotional regulation, one of the main tools that we use when we regulate our emotions. And would you also say, Kenneth, that it is one of the biggest tools that we utilize in the beginning, especially?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Stefan, this is I don't think there's a more important tool than emotional
Mm.
regulation, or this specific tool to emotionally regulate.
Mm.
By far the most powerful tool that the most people find value in on the program. It's
Mm.
very, very powerful, and if you can apply this tool properly, it will absolutely revolutionize your whole life. So super excited to
Mm.
jump into it.
Awesome, fantastic. And yeah, just like the quote says here, just as a sniper identifies and tracks his targets, so do we identify and process our emotions through journaling. So for me, it's kind of like pinpointing with a sniper rifle each and every single one of the emotions we are experiencing and giving them a place where we can really work through them. It's almost like pulling the trigger to regulate those emotions. We are to a certain extent, opening that faucet for each and every single one of the emotions, and we know what's flowing out of there. So yeah, like we've said, we are still busy with the bucket, getting the faucet installed and opened to get our emotions regulated.
Sure, Stefan, if you can just go back to the bucket there very quickly. I want to
Oh
explain
yeah.
something that I think is going to be also very helpful. So there's a bucket, guys. The bucket symbolizes your emotional capacity, like we have said over and over and over and over again in the program. But one way to measure your emotional capacity would be to rate how full you are feeling currently on a scale from 0 to 10. So the
Mm.
bottom of the bucket would be 0, top of the bucket where you start to overflow would be a 10 there, right on the rim of the bucket. That's a 10.
Mm.
So if you had to ask yourself, how overwhelmed or how close to overwhelm am I feeling at the moment? How would you rate yourself, Stefan? Like for you, for real, for right now, how would you rate yourself?
Mm.
How close are you feeling to being overwhelmed right now?
Well, right now, just here as where I'm sitting, I would say actually I'm here about a 6, truth be told. I've done a bit of regulation yesterday, and I'm going to do a bit more regulation today because I know just how important it is to keep doing that on a daily basis. And I always can feel that feeling of it just draining away. Yesterday, for example, I would rate myself here at around about an 8
Hmm.
where I did some journaling actually. And when I finished the journaling, it really felt like it was a bit of a weight off my shoulders.
How much of
And
a
I've
weight would you say? Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
no, 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 no. So I would say it really took that 8 down to a 4 for me. And of course, as we
Wow.
go into each day, new things come in, and that's why it's always important to regulate. So I've got some things planned for the end of today that I'm going to do to regulate some of those emotions as well as the emotions of today. So yeah, it's continuous regulation, continuously working on it. But yeah, no, for me, definitely, I see the worth that comes in being able to utilize journaling on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is about journaling or regulating with the mindset, keeping in mind that I want to bring down the 9 to a 5, or a 9 to 8.5, or a 8 to a 4, or a 7 to a 6, or like we want to do that. We want to be very conscious when we are regulating, when we are writing things down, when we are sending our voice notes in the battle station, or when we are connecting with somebody else. We want to be conscious of the fact that I am lowering the levels of overwhelm and I'm building my capacity. It's all about knowing what it is that I'm trying to achieve and being intentional about it. Without that intentionality, that neural pathway won't get built. It's not going to be established. For myself, if I had to rate myself, I'm probably on a 4 right now. And that is mainly because I had a great time with my wife a little bit earlier this morning. Took her out for a breakfast. We had a nice conversation. We talked about some stuff, just getting out of the house, and we had some really amazing conversations. And that has brought me down to probably about a 4. I would say before that I was probably at a 6. Yeah, so 6 to a 4, that is a great improvement. Usually it's not that big. Usually when I journal, or when I send a voice note, or when I check in with my sponsors and the people that I talk to, it will go down from a 6 to maybe a 5.5, or a 6 to a 5. So actually it's been a good day for me so far.
Oh, no, that's amazing. And yeah, just talking about the connection, I actually just here realized in this moment, because it's not just the journaling I did yesterday. I was also with my own support group, well, not specifically support group, with my own psychologist. I went for a session today. And truth be told, that actually, I said I was at a 6, but now that I'm actually thinking about it, I'd say it's actually also more here to a 4. I think I was, when I went to that session, because with this specific person, it's someone that's very near and dear to my heart. So it's someone I have a very personal and in-depth connection with, which we already know is very, very important to help with that regulation process. Before I went there, I'd say I was back again at around about a 7. And it took me down to here around about between a 5, maybe 4.5. So it was very an important connection, and I'm looking forward to just keep regulating that for later today.
And
so,
Stefan,
yeah.
what's standing out for me as well is how often misleading we can how misleading it can be. I mean, so sometimes you think about a specific context in your life, you think, no, I'm at a higher level, and then, oh yeah, but I did that as well, so it did come down even more. You know exactly what happened to you now. So we need to think about everything that's happening and gauge our emotional level, where we are on that bucket all the time, and try and take everything into consideration and deal with it properly.
Getting perspective, because I think also with gaining that perspective, it really helps us to realize, hey, things are either maybe not as bad as I thought it were, or I'm not actually as overwhelmed or packed as I initially thought. Or maybe it can even be on the other hand of the spectrum. I think it's also important to realize, but hey, I'm actually at a higher level than I actually thought, and therefore it's needed to work through those emotions.
Excellent, excellent.
So yeah, no, the great conversation there. So moving on here to the steps that we are taking with regards to the journaling. So we're going to speak about level 1 journaling, where it stands, because you're going to learn that there are more than just one level of journaling. We're going to see how we need to identify our emotions here, specifically with the structure, 5 emotions, and the elaboration of said emotions, and then also, importantly, doing everything consistently, with consistency in mind. All right, so let's move forward. Kenneth, do you want to take us through step 1 here?
Sure. Journaling has 3 distinct levels, with each level delving deeper into the emotions. Level 1 journaling is a default tool and action that is used to regulate emotions. It assists us in identifying and working through the emotions we experience and the context from which they occur. I mean, that's self-explanatory. We can explain to you guys exactly how to do this journal a little later. But
Yes.
this is one of the default tools and actions that we need to master
Mm,
in order to regulate our emotions, regulating also managing that level of wherever it is in the bucket. That's what
yes,
regulation
exactly.
refers to.
Exactly. And then moving over to step 2 here, journaling starts by identifying the 5 most prominent emotions that you experienced over the course of the past few days, or otherwise since your last journal entry. So you guys are going to learn about the fact that we need to do it consistently with a schedule in mind. So maybe for the first journal entry you ever do, maybe take into consideration, how have I been feeling maybe over the course of the past 3 days? What are the 5 most prominent emotions that comes to mind? And if you struggle, if you're struggling to think of any emotions, then you just refer back to your catalog, like we see here at the last point. To assist with the identification of your emotions, you can utilize the emotional catalog. So the emotional catalog is also there to assist and help identifying the emotions we can't give names to, or if we're struggling to pinpoint that specific emotion. So we take 5 emotions, whether they be positive, negative, and maybe even something in between, something you feel quite neutral about. I do believe we get such emotions that you don't have a very strong inclination towards a negative or a positive, but it's still an important emotion to take heed of. So we firstly identify the 5 most prominent emotions. Anything else from your side, Kenneth?
I just grabbed a sip of coffee there. No, it's fine. Thanks, Stefan. I have nothing to add. That's great. You
All
can also
right,
do the next one
awesome.
if you want.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So after we identified and wrote down the 5 emotions, you then start elaborating on each. So we identified the 5 main emotions. So now we're going to go into depth with each and every one of them. Through our writing, we describe the events, the experiences, and the behavior that cause the emotion, and allow ourselves to explore how we feel regarding said emotion. What comes up to us when we think about the emotion of happiness we may have experienced over the past few days or on a specific day? How do we feel about that irritation or that very irritating experience we had? What is the depth that we can reach if we journey through that emotion and allowing ourselves to feel and think about this specific emotion? They say here many of the emotions we experience also have smaller interlinked emotions that are relevant to the main emotion. And describing the event using these linked emotions can deepen our understanding of what we are feeling and how these emotions interact with each other. So that's a bit of a mouthful. I think to better explain it can be done with the example I've given here. For example, if you write down you feel happy about finishing a big project, but then as you describe this happiness, this happy experience of finishing a big project, you might notice that with this happiness, you also felt a sense of relief at finishing the project, pride at the work you had done, and satisfaction with the finished product. So something like happiness, which might be the main emotion, might be interlinked with a few other emotions. And all of these help to explain the main event. So even if you just have one main emotion of happiness, you can see smaller emotions, and using emotional language to describe an emotion can help us to see how different emotions interplay with each other. And I think with the image especially, we kind of connect the dots on how our emotions are interlinked with each other.
Stefan, so happiness, that's very often could be described as a positive emotion, relief, positive, pride, maybe positive, satisfaction, positive. Do you think there could be negative emotions associated with happiness or underneath the happiness?
No, definitely. I think it's also possible because, for example, you might be very happy to hear that one of your friends have gotten a new opportunity in another town. So you feel quite happy and overjoyed for them being in a better position, but you might also feel very sad for the fact that, okay, I'm not going to see my friend as often anymore. Going to feel maybe a bit, even maybe a bit of resentment. That's also possible. Maybe you resent to a certain extent that I wish also I had a similar opportunity, which isn't a wrong to admit. We need to be able to identify how these interlinked and emotions mingle with each other. And also a negative emotion can have a few positive things associated with it. You can maybe, as a main emotion, feel a sense of disappointment. Maybe you're disappointed in the fact that you weren't able to get to all the work you wanted to get to over the course of the day. But you also feel a sense of determination and motivation to try harder the next day. So it's a very complex, I would say, system. But by starting to journal about all these emotions, we start to understand them a lot better.
Stefan, do you think there's a right or wrong? Obviously, there's positive and negative, to a certain extent. But do you think there's a right or wrong emotion?
No. I think the moment that we say that these emotions are right and other emotions are wrong, we start to inhibit ourselves from truly understanding what we are experiencing and allowing ourselves to feel what we are experiencing, because then we are just suppressing emotions. And then, of course, what we're then doing is we are just allowing things to stay in the bucket, which will over time also lead to it getting filled up. So no emotion is inherently good or bad. It is rather, how do we see it? How do we experience it? And how do we allow ourselves to process it?
I'm glad that we're taking a bit of time on this, because this is stuff that most men don't know and don't understand and don't know how to deal with. So emotions cannot be right or wrong. But a last question that follows on this is, Stefan, in your experience in working with me here at Grace Online, would you say that most of the guys in the program would think that certain emotions are wrong and other emotions are, or certain emotions are more wrong, or it's more wrong to feel certain emotions than what it is to feel other emotions?
No, I think it's just a very human experience to maybe feel guilt for the anger, the jealousy that we might feel. I think we feel a sense of guilt at the human experiences we have, even those emotions that might be linked to our addictions, those emotions that we are trying so hard to move away from. I think it's also important to note them, to understand them, and to also understand the root of them, where they're coming from, to say that, okay, just by feeling this isn't necessarily wrong, but it's rather what I'm going to do with this emotion. What is this emotion linked to? What behavior is it linked to? Is there things that need to be changed? Because I can't change something if I don't allow myself to identify and bring it to the light. If I can't understand the jealousy I experience, if I can't understand the sense of longing or the sense of uncomfortability that comes with maybe with a craving, if I can't allow myself to understand that emotion deeper and other emotions, then how will I be able to process and work through them?
Excellent. Guys, listening to this program right now, if there's anything that you do not understand or that is unclear about this step 3, then please pick up your phone and send a message to either me or Stefan right now. Do it right now. Pick up your phone and send a message so that we can help you to clarify and understand it. It's vital that you understand what we've been talking about here. It's very, very important. So please do not think that you're going to bother us, even if it's 10 o'clock at night. I don't care if it's 4 o'clock at night, if it's still dark outside, if you live in Antarctica, or if you're in the middle of the Indian Ocean, if there's a big whale underneath. I don't care. If you don't understand what's happening right now or what we're talking about, then pick up your phone, send a message, and let's clarify this. Let's sort this out. Let's make sure that we're on the same page.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. So yeah, awesome. So moving onwards, do you want to take this for us, Kenneth?
You can go.
Okay, I'll go. For journaling to have its full regulation impact, it has to be done with consistency and regularity. Just like we've mentioned before, we need to do these things consistently. There has to be, we need to do regular regulation, like we've mentioned before. And like it says here, like learning to ride a bicycle, it takes time to get in a groove where journaling can be done easily with the most impact. So the first time I ever journaled, I didn't exactly feel what I feel now when I journal. It still felt a bit strange. It was a bit uncomfortable, didn't really have the know-how on how to do it properly. But by doing it and doing it consistently, I started to learn how to do it. And like it says here, it is important. It's of great importance to set up a weekly journaling schedule that takes into account the following things: how many times per week you want to journal, what days of the week you want to journal, and what time of the day you want to journal, and to almost set that in stone.
Excellent.
Because the moment we give ourselves the kind of like leeway of saying, I'm just going to try and do, let's say, 4 journal entries a week and leave it at that, that's not specific enough. Therefore, it's very easy for us to get out of the loophole of the consistency. If we set it in stone, we know when and how and where we want to do these things.
Guys, so the point here is, Stefan, that don't wait until you feel overwhelmed at a level 9 before you journal. You journal because you journal. And then, Stefan, how many times per week would you suggest would be a great place for a new person listening to this video to start journaling?
So I think personally, and this is my personal opinion, but anything between 3 and 4 times per week would be a great place to start. I know of guys who journal on a daily basis. I know of people who only journal twice per week. But I think between 3 or 4 times per week is a great place.
And which one of the two would be the best? Which one would be better? Best?
I would say the best. I'd say the best is 4. 4 would be the best to do, because I think that is spread out nicely across the entire week. It gives a lot of opportunity to keep checking in on yourself. So
so there's a guy in the program that's he's like a grand CEO or CFO or I don't know, CM something, I don't know, like a CO guy on the program. We've got like hundreds of people working underneath him, and he's extremely busy. He's very important, very high profile person. And he will not have a meeting until he's journaled. He would journal every single day of the week, Mondays through to Sundays, every single day. This thing is just too important to neglect. And even if he just scribbles on a piece of paper, like, this is the emotions I'm feeling, you would do that. So guys, have that mentality, rather too much than too little.
Yes. No, I wholeheartedly agree. And just because and I also actually want to say this, just because you have a certain schedule in mind and you have it set in stone, does not mean you can journal at other periods of time. I have my set schedule, but if I feel like I need to journal on a day that I don't necessarily journal, I'm going to journal. I'm going to make the time to put in that extra effort if I feel like it's needed. So be kind of like dynamic as well with how you utilize this tool. If you are overwhelmed today and your schedule says you should journal tomorrow, don't wait until tomorrow to journal. Do it as soon as you possibly can.
Love it.
So yeah, awesome.
Step 5 is mine. Is there step 5?
No.
Okay,
but
I'll do the application.
Story is yours.
John's story, creating the emotional catalog, had given me new motivation to connect with what I was feeling. And after this presentation, I can see how the catalog can be used consistently and effectively. Even though I had my catalog and started to identify the emotions I was experiencing, I still had to sit with said emotions, and I did not always know what to do with them. I was initially hesitant in writing about my emotions. My first thought was that this is something meant for kids, but I pressed forward and did my first journal entry. It felt strange, like learning how to draw, playing a music instrument for the first time. It did not feel natural to me, and it took longer than I thought it would. However, I persisted, and the more I did it, the more easily it started to get. I began feeling the sense of relief and accomplishment after journaling, and it felt especially powerful when I could just write out the frustrations of a very busy day at work, or when I could write the joy I experienced after a date night with my wife. It started feeling like a weight was being removed from my shoulders. You see how that level's coming down there, Stefan?
Mm.
And I could finally start breathing again. Dispersed all of this negative and positive energy. I also started noticing that I could handle the stress at work a lot better. And when I really felt the pressure, I would just remind myself that I would just regulate the experience through journaling. The only reason why I could start feeling the results is because I created a schedule for myself and I stayed with it. I knew that I would simply forget to do it if I was not very specific and intentional in adding a time for journaling. Even though I had the schedule, I still journaled when it felt necessary, or when I felt like I wanted to. And it has helped me to have a spontaneous activity that I could do that was still constructive.
Mm.
Okay.
Thanks so much for that, Kenneth.
Yes.
Yeah. This model is just to give a basic template of how journaling would look. So you would write the 5 emotions, whatever they might be, on the top of a page. Then you start breaking it up bit by bit. You write down the first emotion, and then you go on writing what caused that specific emotion, and also journaling through that emotion. Then you move on to the next one, and the next one. It can be a page, it can be 2 pages. You write down as much as you feel like is needed for each and every single emotion. And this works best, I would say, with maybe a A4 hard copy book, especially one of those books you can get in a CNA or any, I would say, scholastic type of shop, where you can get a book that has 192 pages or something like that. But also, if you have a journal, like a daily journal, that can also be very useful. It depends on what works best for the individual. But yeah, anything else from your side, Kenneth?
Nothing. That's perfect. Yeah, I think the only thing maybe that comes to mind now is if you write down happy, remember we want to find 5 emotions that's attached to the happiness. One of them could be overjoyed because my friend's going away. And then there's a sense of jealousy. And then there's guilt because of the jealousy. But there's also a sadness. Yeah, so try and focus on 5 emotions underneath each one of those 5 emotions.
Awesome. All right. And yeah, the metaphor I kind of chose here is one of those pressure cooker valves that you would find. And I think this also goes in with the valve, the faucet, because with the journaling is literally an experience of letting loose the steam in a controlled environment. So taking that dial from the red or maybe the yellow, and taking it downwards all the way to the green, lowering those levels from an 8 to a 4, or from a 7 to a 5, or even just an 8 to 7.5. Just every little bit counts, and every little bit helps as well.
Stefan, have you ever made caramel from condensed milk? Have you ever done that?
Never had the opportunity yet.
So if you buy a tin of condensed milk,
yes,
and you put it in a pot and you boil it, eventually it will turn into caramel. It will go like that caramel thing that you can buy. Some people love doing it. It's too sweet for me. I don't like sweet stuff like that. But someone told me about this and I didn't know how to do it. So I took that condensed milk tin and I put it straight on the stove, on the plate. And I turned the plate, I cranked the plate up, went red hot, and eventually that thing exploded. my tin of caramel was stuck to the roof.
Wow.
And guys, that's what will happen if you don't regulate emotions. You will explode, you will erupt, and you will erupt because you're feeling overwhelmed and the pressure is just too much. And the only way to relieve the pressure would be either going for the pawn that would give you temporary relief, absolutely, or you can go and regulate. Now, remember, regulation is not supposed to be a reactive activity. It's supposed to be a preventative activity. So make sure that you let off the steam before you reach that boiling point, that level of overwhelm.
And I think it's also important to, with the acting out behavior, I think each and every single one of us also acts out in different ways. And along with the pawn, someone might also act out in crying, overwhelmed sadness, or an overwhelmed eruption of rage, or just a complete numbing shutdown. I think there are so many different ways that an individual can also act out in the moment that doesn't necessarily have to be linked, but is usually linked with porn or the addictive activity. But I think it's also important to see, are there other ways in which I usually act out, to kind of like get an idea of the ways in which I need to be on the lookout and to know what I need to do to keep me from exploding like a tin of condensed milk.
Yeah, and the other thing there is also not just obvious things. It could be very subtle things like biting your nails, or things like going to the fridge too often and overeating. And it could be even things like escaping or into exercise or fantasy, or it could be things like substance addiction or alcohol. Those are more obvious, or depriving myself of eating food, or sexual deprivation, or sexual anorexia. So there's a lot of different ways that we can act out to relieve the pressure in a pseudo false, fake way.
Yes. Right. So yeah, just context, we are still at the bucket here. And then we come to the choice. So bearing everything in mind. So the choice that you have here is either A, to consistently utilize journaling as a way to regulate emotions, or you only journal sporadically or choose to not do it at all. So those are the choices that are posed to you, dear viewer, with free will that you have to make said choice. So yeah, it's your choice to make.
Excellent.
Right. And then, yes, the call to action. Do you want to take this, Kenneth?
Yeah, so let's take a moment to reflect on how we're feeling, set up a realistic journaling schedule that takes into account frequency, days on which to journal, and time. Start implementing the schedule and uphold it. After a week of journaling, provide feedback on the experience. Remember, taking care of our emotional well-being is important, and it's okay to ask for help whenever we need it. Okay, so that's the call to action. But the challenge would be for you to grab a piece of paper right now. I asked you to get a book and a pen in the first session. Use that paper and that pen that you have lying there in front of you right now, and do your first journal. Draw 5 circles on the top of the page, write down 5 emotions, write down the first one. After you finished your activity, put your hand over it, take a snap of it, and post it in your recovery battle station. We're going to war. We're taking action. We're making things happen. We're changing ourselves, and we are motivating and inspiring other people to follow suit. So do it right now. Post it in your recovery battle station. And if you're not in the recovery battle station, by this stage, you should be in the recovery battle station. There would be no excuse. But like, if you're not, then like right now, also message me. Let me know, and let's get you hooked up.
Yes.
That's
awesome.
it.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, Stefan. See you in the next one.
And see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.